right, greetings and welcome. All right, this is the second episode of the Case Files, the RPG talk show, and I am Scott's Case Files. So this week we'll hopefully have fewer problems. For my very first episode, when I set up this OBS setting, this OBS setup, I forgot to put in my audio filters. This has it now, which is good. And I can tell because when I'm not talking, there is no mic action. Boom, magic. And the second is for some reason, uh, Twitch decided to cut out at some point and then restart. So there was at least a minute or two or three or five missed from the recordings that I ended up putting out there. All right, let's get started. So this episode is all about Cyberpunk. It's a Cyberpunk role-playing game. And I was actually when I was kind of thinking of preparing for this, I'm like, do I need like some? Or I can never get the direction right. So I need some stuff over here, or what? And the fact is, I actually have a whole bunch of my stuff. This is Cyberpunk 2020. So my first time really playing this was the original Cyberpunk, um, and that was like in 89, 90. Um, and it was actually the original version was set in 2010 as it's setting, as opposed to 2020, which we're of course we're now. And dystopia is on par. But yeah, so it was a very interesting thing. Cyberpunk 2020 is considered right at the moment like the penultimate version of the Cyberpunk role playing game by Artel Sorting Game. Um, but the very first version, the one that took place in 2010, uh, I believe was on the market in '89, I think. So that was there were certainly many things that were simplified compared from that version to the 2020 version. One of the cool things that I missed was um, in the original version, if you were a Netrunner, what you would do is so Netrunner is like the hacker of Cyberpunk, and basically they directly interface with the net, the internet, the net, in virtual reality, basically, and they actually are physically there and doing stuff there. So one of the cool things about the original version was netrunners could um, they could purchase like these settings chips that you could pop into your deck, and basically the one that I really remember was like a noir versions, like a 1920s, 1930s, you know, black and white, the dark streets, and each of your programs also manifested itself. So I remember again the one that comes to mind was like there was a succubus program. I forget what it is. I'm assuming it was like an attack program. Um, but like it would take the form of a woman, a nice looking woman, and when you loaded that program, she would appear and kind of follow you around. And kind of the extra cool thing was these these programs themselves had AI, right? So as you spent time with them, they would like grow in a sense. Like they'd know you. They would remember things like, oh, we did this together and that together, and you're awesome, and da da da. And they would know things about you. The problem was like if that program ever got wiped or damaged or whatever, and you had to get a new one, you'd be starting from scratch. It'd be just like day one of having this program. So that was kind of like this weird, you know, melancholy of the netrunner losing his program that he or she had had for years potentially. So of course, as we well know, you know, uh, technology moves and upgrades faster than anything. So there is no good netrunner that would have the same attack program for, probably more than like a few months. But still really cool. So then 2020 came out, and again, it's considered the penultimate version of Cyberpunk, and Cyberpunk was so cool because of several things. Yeah, too many to name in just a 1 hour show here, but um, it was the first role playing game that I remember, and I've been role playing since I was 11, and in 1990 I was in 89 90 I was in the Navy already. Um, and we'll get to that. There's a story that's attached to that, so let's put a pin in that, and we'll be back. But yeah, so it was the first game that I remember playing, that I remember buying and playing, that had this message of like there was an attitude that went along with this game. With other games, there were, here's the rules, here's the background, go play. And with this, it was the attitude of the game was so very important to the game. The ideals of living on the edge, pushing the boundaries, breaking the rules, uh, it's just like that. And the future is disposable, is what's a big message, and it was like this. It was basically when you studied the game, when you kind of got into it, you were studying this weird futuristic subculture that didn't exist. It was really interesting. Like the heroes of the game are the people who are either a you know somehow living it big, bucking the system, and surviving and thriving, or the people who buck the system, the rocker boys, the the people who don't want to live inside the system, the corporate, hegemony, and call it out to its face and somehow still survive. The Johnny Silverhand of the game. Um, so it was just this weird thing. I mean, before, role playing games, you were you just kind of made your way. You try to get better, and you got better for the sake of getting better, so you could take on harder stuff. Well, in Cyberpunk, basically, in order to compete, and here's kind of a messed up circle that the game had you in, kind of getting into. So if you're just a meat person, no cybernetics, no enhancements, no nothing, you could get by on your own personal skill up to a level, and really in Cyberpunk, not a very high level. Um, so okay, so I need to compete. So that means I need to get cybernetics or some kind of enhancements or something. So when you get enhancements and cybernetics, you actually lose a part of yourself. You have an empathy score every time that you get cybernetics that goes down, and it's a random amount. So it's like roll this many dice when you get this implant and see what your empathy is at. So if your empathy drops too far, suddenly you're a cyber psychotic. You're suffering from cyber psychosis. And what this condition is basically um, you don't you lack any empathy because you are not even really human anymore. You don't have you've forgotten, you lack this way to connect to people, uh, and just see them as these little meat bags that you can crush with a little flick of your wrist. They're insignificant and sad and nothing, and again, it's really really messed up, but realistic. So again, let's get back to this circle. So basically, you want to compete, so you get enhancements, and those enhancements, assuming you survive, take up to another level of competition. You're competing against people who have the same level of cybernetics or better. So suddenly you're like, wow, that was close. In order to compete or just survive, I got to be better. That means getting more cybernetics, and boom, 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 and this circle continues until basically it never ends until you die. Basically, you either die or become a cyber psychotic. And that's the circle. The circle keeps going around in this thing. Enhance to survive, get better, achieve, and then competing against higher level people, enhance to survive, etc. So it was this weird, you know way of getting into the game that I hadn't experienced before. Now, on another note, the thing that I think was the downfall of the game for me was because this game, this circle that I'm talking about, the circle of improvement, of enhancement and whatnot, was encouraged by the game. You had So that's where Chromebooks come in. Boom. And by the way, these are so beautiful. The artwork in these are just amazing. The Chromebooks are basically like the equivalent of flipping through the Sears catalog, but for weapons and cybernetics and enhancements and stuff like that. So the downfall of the game for me was this cycle continued so much, and the game catered to it because, ironically, that's what it should do, right? So the problem got to the point where um, you had you could have people with like armor and whatnot, the likes of which, by the game's own design, certain weapons couldn't touch. So like if you were, again, if you hadn't gotten that special enhancement, or you didn't get that extra weapon, and you were fighting someone higher level than you in terms of enhancements, suddenly you could literally have a perfect shot at them, boom 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 boom, and it would do nothing. And that's just the way the rules went. Now there were, you know there were like kind of house rules that they even officially put into place, like you can't stack armor, or stacking armor bad, but you still got to a point where the armor could get so high that someone who was like, not quite on that enhancement circle as high as you were, couldn't do anything. You could literally walk up to him, walk past him, stroll, and that kind of sucked. In the games I play, I always want there to be danger for everyone. Now, someone can be sure more, skilled or lucky or whatever, and that's great. Yeah, and that's what it should be. It should be easier for, as you kind of become more experienced with your skills or whatever, that things come a little easier. But you should never be like untouchable by another character. There should always be this chance that even like the guy who has no training throws a punch at you and could potentially hurt you, if not knock you out or something, And so Cyberpunk got to that. It kind of did it to itself, because that's what it should have done. Um, so yeah, I didn't like that, and that's kind of where it failed for me. But not again, not to say it wasn't a bad game. I played a great deal of it, and had a great time. I GM'd a bunch of it too. Um, and there's just so much information. Like, I kind of go back and forth on how many books or whatever I want a game to have to play it. And like, again, you can play Cyberpunk 2020 with just the Cyberpunk 2020 books. But if you wanted to specialize in something or get something extra, or like kind of get more in depth into something, Cyberpunk made it available to you. Some good stuff. Oh, I think this was for maybe like the original, like the first edition of the game. So Solo of Fortune, done up like a Soldier of Fortune magazine type thing, the same type of articles and stuff like that. So there's that. You have Ratch Bartmoss's Guide to the Net. If you wanted to get more in depth, or make net running kind of more in depth and interesting, if that was your thing. Let's see here. Home with Brave, basically telling the story of what America looked like in this era. Like, and this is more like, not so many stats, I don't think, if I recall. It was more like, here's how to, as a game master, here's how to set the stage for this. Like when you're traveling outside of, the Night City or what have you. If you're traveling across the states, this is what things could look like. Um, and it was just kind of cool. Again, it's something you can have, you don't need. Uh, Dark Metropolis. Um, so this is cyberpunk horror. So this is all like, if you really want to experience the nitty gritty, horrible, negative side of living in urban decay, this book is for you. So it's stuff like, let's see here, you know, heat waves happening and how that affects like the people in the city, stress, people watching over you. And again, this doesn't it sound a little familiar? The eye in the sky, somebody's watching you, misplaced identity. Um, let's see, like disasters, again, heat waves, heat exhaustion, rioting. Does this sound a little familiar? different people to meet. Let's see here, like drugs, altered states, death spa. I really have to look. Oh, what is a death spa? All right, you know what? Let's look that up right now. I'm kind of curious. Page 84. What is a death spa? Let's see. Ooh, jeez. Let's see. So this is death spa. Okay, here we go. So this is basically like dying for fun. It looks like. Um, they promised people the ability to die and be brought back for a fee. Flatlining became popular activity of the wealthy, but when it was discovered that it was all a scam, that they were all really experiencing simulations with subliminal messages, company went under, nothing more heard of it. Only until recently had this fad returned in the form of the death spa. Holy crap. That is like the darkest thing ever. People dying for kicks, dying for fun. Let's see here. Did I bring that over? Oh, and of course, how could we forget Black Hand Street Weapons 2020? This is basically, you know, hey, so we gave you some, basic weapons in the book, but if you're looking to kind of broaden the categories of weapons, here are the stats, that kind of thing. So, really cool. So, yeah, Cyberpunk 2020 was the shit. Um, so, let's see here. So there was a third edition, which I got, I believe. No, you know what? I did not actually end up getting. I kind of read a lot of reviews, and I caught some like snippets of it, that kind of thing, and it just wasn't my thing. It was just a little too weird. It was like, if I remember right, it was like it's in like the cities themselves like change. So you could like, if you're like homeless or something, you could go to sleep on a park bench and wake up inside like an office center or something like that. It was really weird. I don't remember much of it, but I remember that I wasn't into it. Um, so yeah, and then the next edition came out, Cyberpunk Red. Oh my goodness. I am so looking forward to Cyberpunk Red. It keeps getting pushed back in part because of COVID, and basically they can't get all their game developers together. And plus, I mean, it's my impression. I'm pretty sure that Artel Sorin or Project Red rather, and Artel Sorin are trying to sync the release of the video game Cyberpunk 2077 and Cyberpunk Red, which pushes up the timeline to this in a way far better than I think Cyberpunk Third Edition did. Uh, so yeah, and I'm so looking forward to it. It's so it's different than the Cyberpunk I'm used to. From what I've read and what I've seen, I can see that. For example, oh hey, Dr. Ackley. Sorry I missed you there. They were written by a whole staff. The company was Artel Soren. The main writer was a guy named Mike Pondsmith, um, who I met, and I'm getting to some stories on that one. Um, but yeah, it was written. These were all written by Artel Soren Games, so one gaming group. So a whole bunch of people took part of this, and et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, yes. So timeline and Cyberpunk Red is pushed up to 2077 in a time when Night City is recovering from basically a ground zero nuclear attack, or depends on who you ask, type of thing, how it was caused. But it's basically putting itself together again. Things are fragmented out there. Like, for example, netrunners in the other games, if you were a netrunner, you could uh, find data stores and anything you wanted from anything you could get to with your skill. You could access from the whole wide world or even space. There was like space stations and stuff out there to be hacked. But yeah, you and just like the internet of today, information was available worldwide, and you could hack worldwide. In Cyberpunk Red, Cyberpunk 2077, because of the way that the world has kind of fragmented itself, now you're limited to pretty much local nets, like picking up stuff that happens in the city, and that's like the edge of your investigative abilities. and it's also very much like what's in front of you now. Now you can hack like cybernetics. You can security cameras, actual people. Cybernetics actually things attached to people you can hack. And that's like a big part of the video game. I know, like making somebody like pull a gun on themselves and shoot their head off. With their hacked cyberarm. Um, but yeah, so it's interesting. One of the things I wanted to bring up is the with the empathy stat. It goes down every single time you get any um, cyberware. It it's just so weird because like again in role playing games you want to be cool and better and whatnot, and in few other games before then or any you didn't have to lose a part of yourself to be better. So like I didn't have to literally, I mean, if you get a cyber arm, you are literally having someone cut off your meat arm on purpose. Either A, because you got an injury, or B, because you just want the upgrade, and then cutting off a healthy arm. So that was really weird, and it's going to be interesting to see in the game as it comes out. And I believe Cyberpunk's Red is coming out in September, unless they push it back again. So we'll see how that goes. I'm you know, everyone's hoping for that it stays on schedule and whatnot. So we'll see, but hopefully September. All right. So I also wanted to do some cyberpunk stories. So so like my experiences with people who actually worked on the game and that kind of thing. So I have two big ones, two major ones. So the first one, as I talked about earlier, I was in the Navy in 1990, and I was at my A school. I was a linguist, and our school was the Presidio of Monterey in California, and the Defense Language Institute. So I was there, and my roommate was a gamer, and we knew gamers, and we decided to go to DundraCon in 1990. And so I signed up for games. I wanted to be in some sessions. I signed up for Cyberpunk, and I could swear it was the original version as opposed to 2020. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the original version. Um, so anyway, so I signed up for a session of this, and I get there, and like it's not even really a DunderCon. Well, at the time at least wasn't really a convention center. It wasn't held at a convention center. I think it was like it was just a hotel that had like one or two big rooms for um, big meetings or conferences, that kind of thing. So where the game was actually held in like a hallway. It was funny. So like meet in the hallway outside of room 122. So we did. So it was me and I think four other guys, and we're waiting, and the person who's going to run the thing was late. So uh, suddenly this guy comes around the corner, and he is totally dressed like your cyberpunk ideal. He had the worn leather jacket, he had the scruff, he had the mirror shades and long hair, and he had this hot girlfriend that he brought with him. So he already had some geek cred with us as far as we were concerned. And so basically he's like, okay, so here's what's going on, and he hands us each like he had written down our stats on like notebook paper, and he ripped one piece into four pieces and gave piece of it to each of us, which was our character sheet. And he's like, all right, so here's what's going on. You guys are booster gang members. Boosters are pretty much just violent gang members looking to make money and get drugs and shit like that. So you guys are boosters, and we played out the scene where the leader of the gang was basically telling us, and we were kind of low level. He was telling us basically, okay, so you need to go to this mall and pick up this stuff that I made a deal for. So you gotta get in there, you gotta get the stuff, which I've already paid for. It's already a things that something's already been worked out, and then get out of there with the stuff and bring it back here, and that's it. So the first thing we realize is they aren't going to let boosters into the mall. This is cyberpunk, man. This is like there's guys with submachine guns at at the entrances and stuff. So we're not getting in, and if we try, we're gonna die. And we were very low geared. Like, I think two of us had cybernetics. My character, if I recall right, had I forget what they're called, but they're called, oh, rippers. They're called rippers. So basically, like on one of your hands, the first knuckle is removed and replaced with a plastic sheath that's melded to your body. And when you go like this, these carbon plastic razors basically extend like a cat, and you can cut people. The only other guy with like cybernetics had like what was called a slice and dice. That's basically like your again. There's a partial finger replacement, and there's basically a monofilament wire on a reel inside with a weight that is made to look like a fingernail. Pull out the fingernail, and it's attached to this monofilament wire, and it just cuts through anything like it wasn't even there. And you can make it longer and spin it around or whatever you want. You've seen the movies. And the other two had like guns. I think one guy had a gun, a pistol, the other guy had a knife. It was just so low level, but it was fun. So we basically decided, okay, so where are we gonna get clothes? Oh, look at it's the mall's right next to a bus station. So let's mug people getting off the bus, and they literally have suitcases worth of clothes. So we do, and it turns out they are freaking heavily armed. And suddenly there's a firefight, and we find ourselves, I kid you not, we moved into like a nearby church in this walking, running firefight between us and these Booster King members and these poor travelers. And we all got murdered in a church in in 2010. In Night City. So we all died. It was, and the whole session was over in like 20 minutes. From the second the guy got there till the game was over, it was like 20 minutes. We just died that quickly. And the guy just looks at us and he says, "Well, that's Cyberpunk for you." And with that, he was gone. Never heard from him again. So fast forward to many years later, like almost present day, like just a few years ago, and I'm like, I'm really curious about who the guy was, because he said one of the things he noted was that he worked on the game. He was one of the designers or something, or he did something with the game. So okay, so let's put on my detective hat. So basically, I went back to the Dundracon site where they kept the like the descriptions of, like, not descriptions, like the like the, God, what's that called? Not a pamphlet. It's like, here's what's going on at the con, and here's what time you should be here for this and this. It listed all, all the listings of all the events. So and they had these scanned and online. So I kept going. Okay, it must be 1990. So we go here, and I looked it up, and I'm like, okay, we were there on the weekend because that's all we were in school on Monday through Friday. So it had to be like Saturday or Sunday, and I'm like, okay, let's look at the Cyberpunk 2020 things. One was run like by Mike Pondsmith himself, one of the major creator of the game, major owner of the company. And what do you call it? So I'm like, okay, guy definitely was not Mike Pondsmith. So I kind of just started digging, and I like found a name. I actually found a name. Um, so I'm like, okay, well, let's Google this person. So, and I haven't gotten their permission or anything to use their name, so I don't want to do that. Anyway, but so I found this person, and then I like did some research, Googled them, and I saw it brought me to this site where it was a group picture of this company that he worked for. And it's like normal, normal business guy, normal business guy, normal business lady, normal business lady. And here's a guy with long hair and a, leather jacket still, or so it's like, oh shit, that's the guy. And sure as heck, if you look at, third from left, blah, blah, blah. So I went further, and I saw that he had a Facebook account. I'm like, hey, I know you don't remember this, but blah, blah, blah. And I was wondering if I could, connect with you, if that'd be cool. And the guy's like, I totally actually remember that. And I wasn't supposed to do it, but Mike Ponce was supposed to run that. And it turned out that he wasn't going to be able to. So he asked if I would. and I really didn't prepare for it, and la la. And he like Facebook friended me. And we don't. I won't say that we communicate a lot, as in fact barely. But it's just so cool to make that connection and see that he's still the cool guy that I remember, which is really neat. The second story that I'll share with you guys is Gen Con. So Gen Con, Geneva Convention, used to be the RPG. Well, it's still an RPG convention. It's a whole lot more than that these days. But back in the day, it was more role playing games, and it took place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, my hometown. Uh, and as it turns out, I was working with my buddy Aaron on his game, the Neverworld role playing game at the time, which is going to be in a later Case Files episode, by the way, talking about the Neverworld role playing game, the rise and fall, etc. But I was working his booth, so I got a vendor badge, so that gives you special privileges. That means you can get in and out of the vendor hall even when it's closed because you need to be there to like set things up or tear things down or do stuff. And I I just and it the cool thing about Gen Con is it's also a place for you to network. And I'm pretty sure it's the same way today, but like if especially if we're had access to the vendor hall before or after everything got busy, this is a great time to walk around and exchange, business cards if you had them, names, stuff, submissions. Aaron, I know, was working with a whole bunch of artists who had booths there, so like they would bring by their portfolio, and this is when they would work on that. Well, I really, 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 really wanted to work with Artel Starting Games and write some stuff for Cyberpunk. I really, really, really did. And so I wrote. I was a short story writer at the time. That was kind of my thing. Um, and so I basically wrote up a short story, at least a part of one. Again, you don't these people that you're trying to submit things to have busy lives, doing stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to give them a feel for my writing style. So I was actually, I think, during the actual day in the vendor hall, and I came by and I brought a friend of mine with me who was also working on the Neverworld role playing game and then working the booth. And I got there and I'm like nervous as hell, and I have my Manila envelope, with my stuff in it, my information and everything. Like this is potentially where my life changes. And we walk up, and Mike Pondsmith and his wife Lisa were there, and they like saw the name of the guy I was with on his badge, which just so happened to be the name of someone who worked with their company, not the guy that I knew from years before, but someone else. And it was like the exact spelling, which was the spelling of the name was weird. So they accused him of being, of like maliciously taking his badge or something like that and trying to pose as him. And it went back and forth. We kind of got briefly heated. We're like, you're a poser, you're a criminal. What are you doing? And basically, my buddy produced his driver's license and showed it to him, and sure as hell, that's his name, spelled the exact same way as this dude that works for them. And yeah, so that calmed down. And finally, like, hey, by the way, I'm really love your game. Everything you put out is amazing. I love it. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm like I like doing short stories and stuff. And if you could check this out and if it see if you like it, and if maybe I could work with you, that'd be awesome. I'm Scott. Handed it to him, and Mike Mount's I'm not sure if you ever heard him talk, but he has this bass voice, and bass in the terms of low, and it's just beautiful to listen to. it's hypnotic. Please Google Mike Pondsmith interview or something, and you will just love just listening to him speak. Anyway, so yeah, he took this way, and he's like, yeah, we'll take a look at it, and I'll let you know. So as the convention went on, I basically told him where I was at, I noted it in my thing. I'll be at the Neverworld booth if you're looking for me. And so I did what anybody who is, in my position would do, and I started like, oh, I'm just gonna do a lap around the convention, and etc., etc. And see, and basically every time he saw me, he made sure he didn't make eye contact. So I'm more or less sure that he read my stuff over and did not like it and just didn't want the confrontation of having to break my heart. So yeah, I just basically, after a few times of seeing forceful non-eye contact, I decided to let it go, and never heard from him again, etc., etc. That was not meant to be. Um, but it was it was funny. Uh, it was good times, and it was good, and just like writing meeting your favorite author, meeting your favorite actor, meeting a person who has something to do with something you've spent so many hours of your life on, like these role playing games, and being able to be in their presence and um, let them know, hey, by the way, this was so awesome, and I've enjoyed it so much, and I spent so many hours, playing this and enjoying it and getting into it, and you know, that alone was worth it. Getting able to say, to Mike Pondsmith that I loved his stuff, was worth the price of admission there. So, that was pretty cool. Interestingly, so Mike Pondsmith is with current events being as they are and whatnot. He did make several statements, and kind of one of the more, you know, I wouldn't say, I'm not sure blunt is the right word, but one of the more apropos quotes of his. Well, actually, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the quote. It was, when I wrote Cyberpunk, I meant it as a warning, not something to aspire to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We didn't get that apparently, so here we are. Um, but yeah, so these were also so many great experiences that kind of just revolved around Cyberpunk and its various iterations, and the books are beautiful. The artwork is on some, the artwork is just kind of very basic, and that's okay. This is a piece of art. If I really would like this is frameable, you know. Um, but like, especially if you get into the Chromebooks, these are just gorgeous. Again, especially if you're playing Cyberpunk, and this again, you treated this just as it's meant to be. Like, again, the Sears catalog of cyberware and augmentations and weapons. It was like, oh my god, it's like Christmas all over again. So there were also some other weird kind of side projects. One was, it was called, that Artel Soaring Games did, kind of based off of Cyberpunk. So there was like Vampire the Masquerade had gotten big at one point. So Artel Soaring Games rolled out what if there were vampires in Cyberpunk um, source book, basically. I can't remember what the heck it was. But basically, you could be a vampire in the dark future, dystopian future. That was very interesting. It was like an alternate world book. And also, there was a game called Cyber Generations that I played one time. I played, not DM'd, or GM'd. And this was based on something like out of, what was that, Tribes? There was this TV show, Tribes. It was a New Zealand TV show where, like, suddenly all the adults die, and the only people left over were kids under like 16 or something like that. And basically, some kind of, it was kind of like sometime maybe in the future of Cyberpunk, this disease gets out or something and kills adults. And then what it also does is the kids who survive tend to get like weird abilities. You had there was one, was like a kind of like a hacker where they suddenly grew, a appendage that they could, like a little wire they could shoot out of their hand, and that would could link to technology and control it and stuff like that. I forget what the other ones were. I think it was like, weaponized stuff. Basically, it's like, imagine if something like a virus got out there that had like nano creatures in it, and the nano creatures, killed some people because maybe they weren't compatible because of their age, and then in others reconstructed certain parts of the body and stuff like that. So that was interesting. So it was like, what if all the adults died and the remaining kids had powers? What would that be like? What kind of game? So yeah, I played one session of that. That was interesting. But yeah, so there were several offshoots of Cyberpunk that they rolled with one time or another. Let's see, and of course, Cyberpunk was first, I believe, but then there was other things like you probably heard of Shadowrun. Maybe it was like, what if Cyberpunk was combined with magic and like elves and orcs come back into existence type of thing. So, but I don't. But Shadowrun could not have existed without Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk, to my knowledge, was like the first that kind of brought this new type of role playing game out there. So it's really cool. And again, it was groundbreaking. Absolutely. It was fun. Um, it was gritty. Like I played Cyberpunk games where I had a character for like 3 sessions and suddenly they're dead. Whereas generally speaking, in a role playing game, the role playing games are the odds are slanted in the player's direction, because if players keep dying, maybe you won't have a good time. But in Cyberpunk, the gritty realness of it all, in terms of people freaking die. There's really advanced weaponry and cybernetics out there, so people are gonna die. That's kind of part of the game, so you kind of just took it, and that was okay. Roll up a new character. Um, let's see here. I think that's really all I have about the Cyberpunk thing. Other than, again, I'm absolutely going to be doing an actual play of Cyberpunk Red once it comes out, whenever that is. There are several games coming out that I'm very hyped to run. Again, Cyberpunk Red being one of them. The other major one being Modifius's Dune, which will be coming out sometime before the end of the year, I think. So look forward to actual plays of both of those relatively soon, next several months, before the end of the year, hopefully. But yeah, so that's it. Unless there's anything from the peanut gallery, I'm gonna end the stream here. I just don't have much more to say. Uh, I kind of got over all my material and everything. Maybe I'll get the courage to ask that guy that I kind of reconnected with after all the years to see if he'd be interested in doing a version of the talk show to kind of talk about his experiences there. So that's not impossible. So we'll see how that goes. But I have to get a little courage up for that one. He's an intimidating guy to me, not in reality, but to me. Um, so yeah, let's end the stream here. Dr. Arkeller, thanks for coming around. I appreciate it. And we'll be talking again soon. Next week's case files topic, I'm not sure of yet, but we'll figure it out. I'll post it somewhere. Follow me on Twitter, all the good stuff. Follow me on the Twitches. I eventually this will be on YouTube. So if you're seeing this on YouTube, think about follow all my Twitter, Twitch, all that kind of good stuff, and Discord, and kind of keep track of what I'm doing, and if you want to get involved. Cool. Thanks, Dr. Ackerley. I will see you soon. In fact, hopefully by Thursday at the latest. Our Tales from the Loop. Cool. All right, that's it for now, peoples. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I just want you to remember to have fun, help other people, go forth and do no harm, and be awesome. So there you go. Bye for now.